Our weekly livecast. This is Jamie from Stonemeyer Games, and obviously you're on the Stonemeyer Games Facebook page or YouTube channel if you're watching this. Today is June the 2nd, first livecast of June 2021. I hope you're doing well today. Let me start out with something I've been forgetting in some of the recent livecast, which is my chocolate of the day. I went to Trader Joe's the other day and found something new that I haven't had before. Crispy peanut butter filled milk chocolate peanuts. They are really, really delicious and really unhealthy based on the nutritional information on the back. So while it will be easy to eat a whole bag of these, I've been trying to limit myself to like two a day, which is tough to do because they're really delicious. So that's my chocolate of the day. Do you have a chocolate of the day? What are you indulging in today? Hi, Kritty. Thanks for joining us today. As usual, I'll be sharing Stonemeyer Games news, a little bit of news, answer any questions you have about anything, except for spoilers, anything except for spoilers. And I have a few random topics to discuss as well. Hi, George. Thanks for joining us today. I guess I'll mention a few little fun things as people join us. I played disc golf last Wednesday, actually, a few hours after the live cast, later in the afternoon, in early evening. I played disc golf with a few buddies and had a great time doing that. It's a fun group that's all connected to board games. There's Paul, who's the designer of Honey Buzz. He wrecked us. He had a great round of disc golf. There's Jake, who runs the Decision Space podcast, which is on YouTube and other podcast platforms. And there's Miles, who is a local friend as well, who did the art or some of the art for Red Rising. So it's a great group of guys to get together and play disc golf and talk about games as we walk around. I've really enjoyed getting into that sport. Carlos is here. He says, earlier this year you mentioned in a blog post that you were open to revealing a key component from an unannounced game to get early feedback from fans. What happened to that idea? Trying to remember the full reference for that, Carlos. One idea. Maybe I'm thinking of a different blog post. There was one blog post I mentioned where I was talking about kind of the journey and how part of the fun of Kickstarter, which we no longer do as creators at Stonemeyer Games, part of the fun of Kickstarter is having people along for that journey and to get early feedback on things that that you want feedback on. And so if that's what you're referencing, there is the possibility we'll do that in the future. But I think it depends on. I think it all comes down to the component. Like if we are really, really internally questioning a component, then that would be something that we would maybe share publicly and get feedback about it. There is a component that I might post a poll about to maybe Stonemeyer ambassadors. It may not be completely public. Most of the stuff will probably be done with Stonemeyer ambassadors. But one example of a component of a big thing that we're working on that I've been talking about very openly, you can kind of see it behind me here, is the Wingspan nesting box. The big box, the organizer, no gameplay content, just a big box to hold all past and future Wingspan stuff. So that's been something, even though it isn't, I guess it is directly related to a game. It is not a game by itself, but that is something that I have discussed publicly quite a bit to get feedback on. So I can't remember the exact component you are referring to, but yeah, if there's ever a component that we really just can't figure out internally what is best for people, I'll bring it up to people and ask because I don't want to make something that's heavily debated on the back end after we've already made it and it's too late to change it. Critty's chocolate of the day is Toblerone. Frank is joining us today, despite his Kickstarter campaign being live right now. Frank, I was really excited to see the Isle of Cats campaign go live last week, or the expansion campaign. I, of course, backed it because I love the game, I love cats, and I'm particularly excited about the kittens. I want to get kittens into my game. So I'm glad the campaign's going so well for you, Frank. Tim's eating a Butterfinger snack bar. Nice. Some nice treats today. Tim is joining us. Tim is the developer who's working on the Tapestry, the full AI digital version of Tapestry, and is also working on, or he has already made the scoring app for Red Rising that you can use. Hopefully, you all are having fun with Red Rising right now, and you should be getting your copies of the Between Two Castles expansion quite soon. Oh, looks like I have a Walter behind me. So I'll do a shipping update real quick for Between Two Castles. From what I've heard, it started shipping in Australia, New Zealand. The U.S. shipments to Champions should start this week, from what I've heard. I think the shipments in Europe should start next week, and Canada I think is next week as well. So just a week or two after the pre-order, we are already shipping the expansion to you. I'm always happy to do that. Let me give Walter a little food real quick while I'm talking to you. All right, then. Come here. He's going to be picky today, apparently. I always try to put it so it's a little bit on camera. I think I missed that a little bit. Maybe you can see him a little bit over there. I'll stand it. Hi, Walter. What else is going on today? Played a bunch of games this past weekend. So we had. I'm very fortunate that all of my friends are fully vaccinated, and so we have been slowly getting used to getting together without having to wear masks. And so I played The King's Dilemma over the weekend. Played sessions. What did we play? All the way up to 14, I think. I think we played 4 games, 11 through 14. Um, this weekend we did that, and then I had a game day with some other friends where we played. What did we play? We played role player. I taught role player. I taught the crew, and we played crokinole. And then I learned and played Viscounts of the West Kingdom yesterday, Monday this week, and had a great time because a lot of my friends had the day off. That is the latest in the West Kingdom series, or the Kingdom series from Shem Phillips and Garphill Games, and had a great time with that. A lot of really innovative mechanisms in that deck building rondel game of Viscounts of the West Kingdom. And the video that I did this past weekend was about poker-like games. So if you've enjoyed poker at some point in your life, I did a video about tabletop games, modern hobby tabletop games that have something that captures the feel of poker in those games. That was fun to talk about because I used to play a lot of poker. I used to play it every week before I started hosting weekly game nights instead. And I also did a blog this past. I did kind of an easier blog on Monday because it was Memorial Day. Still working a little bit, but on Thursday last week I did a blog post about my experience with Greater Than Games operations. Greater Than Games handles the warehousing and fulfillment and freight shipping for shipments to distributors in the U.S. And I wanted to kind of say how impressed I am with how far GTDG operations has come, and I wanted to advocate them to other people who are looking for a fulfillment center and warehousing, and even a distribution brokerage in the U.S. If you're a game publisher looking for all those things in one place handled by one group of people, I think GTG does a great job of doing that. I'll jump back over to questions real quick. I have a few other topics here, but let's see. Carlos says, it wasn't specific to a component, more in the lines that if you show components way before you start production, you might catch issues like the one with plastic meeples in Pendulum. Yes. Well, Carlos, that actually has led to something, but not exactly what I originally thought it would be. Let me pick up the food here before Biddy starts eating it. Biddy is under my desk right now, stalking the food that Walter leaves behind. So the big thing that we've done is I've changed the proofreader process so that proofreaders now, which is a fairly small group, very small group, the proofreaders see everything. So they used to just see, like, I would send a proofreader the page proofs at a certain stage of the project, and that's all they would see. And now I share everything. I share photos of the sample components. I share the original Word document, the copy edited version of it, the proofs throughout the process, the final proofs. I'm going to share with them photos of the pre-production copy and even the mass production copy. So they are seeing everything along the way, and all of them have full permission to raise any red flags at any time about any components, anything they're concerned about, and they have with a project that we're working on right now. This is one of the things that I've been deep in the trenches of over the last couple of weeks. This proofreading process. It happens fairly quickly once the page proofs come together, although the copy editing happens well before that. But it's been really enlightening. Like they've definitely caught some things that they would not have caught if they didn't have access to all that information. So I think that is kind of the version of it that we're going with right now, rather than share. Rather than spoil the surprise for the general public, we do have a group of people now who are looking for stuff like that in detail throughout the entire proofreading process. Yeah, and pre-production process too. Darren says he got super fast shipment on the Tuscany and Wingspan European expansion, which we do have back in stock now at our fulfillment centers. We're really happy to have that back in stock. Thanks for getting that, Darren. Alan says the King's Dilemma is so fun, and it really is. It's such a clever legacy game, very different than any other legacy game that I've played, and it's got to be up there in one of the best competitive legacy games, up there with arguably, I'm going to have to throw Charterstone into that ring, but the King's Dilemma has been a lot of fun for us. Frank says, is there going to be an expansion for Red Rising? I hope so someday, Frank. Our plan is to wait until Pierce finishes the second trilogy and then do something with the game at that point. Whether it's a spin off, a new game, an expansion for the original game, we don't know yet. We haven't started really thinking about it because we're waiting for him to finish the story. Because everything for Red Rising is built from the story, from the ground up from the story. The theme first approach is really important to us with that. So we haven't started working on it, but we hope to do that someday. Josh says that he played Dune Imperium, which I've been singing the praises of for the last few months, and I'm glad you got to play that, Josh. I love the game. I'm glad you had fun with it. I loved it so much that even though I have access to a copy, a friend's copy, I bought a copy because I wanted to be able to play it whenever I wanted. Yeah, just having a blast with that game. I had a great chat with Chris at Meeple Overboard the other day. You might know Chris. You might know Chris's face and voice from the Dice Tower. He's been on the Dice Tower for a while now, and I believe he recently moved to Florida to be on the Dice Tower channel. So whenever you see the Four Squares reviews, Chris is now one of those people as part of those reviews. And he also has a podcast, Meeple Overboard. So I joined him for a wonderful chat about Red Rising on that podcast just the other day. I think that went live on Friday. And today, Stonemaier Games news, I'm going to be pretty vague about this, but we do have a playtest for a project that I'm working on, and really excited to get the latest version of this to the table. Yeah, so that'll happen after lunch today with Joe and Alex. We'll do a playtest here. Let's see, Alan says that his two favorite competitive Legacy games are Kingdom Death Monster. I believe that's what you meant by KD. Oh no, King's Dilemma. Okay, obviously not. That's what we're talking about. King's Dilemma. Yeah. So King's Dilemma and Charterstone. Thanks, Alan. Chris asked how my dad is and how my cats are. Cats are doing great. Biddy's under the desk right now, and my dad is doing pretty well. He's still gaining his weight back. Still getting some diagnoses from different kind of high-level medical centers around the country to figure out how to deal with the cancer part of this, but I'm glad his intestinal system, his GI system, is reactivating after his surgery to remove a little bit of surgery from a little bit of cancer from his small intestine. Tina says, just got the Rise of Fenris and can't wait to get started. That's awesome, Tina. I'm glad to hear it. She says, a question about shipping in the EU. Are there any plans to ship from outside the UK so duties can be avoided? That's a great question, Tina. In total, like, duties will never completely be avoided. Someone is always paying the duties, whether those duties are like when the games enter the country in mass and in big pallets, or if they're paid by the consumer. We are talking to Spiral Galaxy. I want to continue to work with Spiral Galaxy because they are wonderful to work with, and I am hoping they can find a solution to let us ship from within the EU, since the UK is no longer part of the EU. So we're working on that. I'm hoping they work on it. And it might be a move that we make in the long run. I know it is tough to have to be able to pay VAT right now on games that you buy from our web store. Hopefully the Champion discount counteracts that pretty well. But I understand that's a frustration right now. Melissa from Tantrum House is joining us. She said, we had a great time playing Between Two Castles with the expansion this weekend. That's awesome. Thanks for expanding the game. It's one of our favorites at Tantrum House. Thanks so much for chiming in to say that, Melissa. One of my favorite content creators, Melissa, and Tantrum House in general. That made my day to hear that. Kirk says he owns the English edition of Wingspan, but in Germany. I saw the German edition of the European expansion on sale. Assuming language is not an issue, can I mix these two, or will there be issues with bonus cards? Like birds with color in their name and things like that, where the bird names are different. I can say from the components, they're all the same components. They're made at the same place by the same factory. So components, you won't have any issues there. There are some slight differences in the bonus cards, though, and those that refer to any specific colors in the names, I think body parts in the names, and people in the names. So you're going to run into a few of those, but not so much that I think it's going to cause any major conflict. I think you can easily work around it, especially if you can easily get it. I'd say go for it. Although we do have the English version on our website as well. Our web store is our fulfillment center is in the UK, so we can easily ship to you from there. Yeah. Tim says, what is something you'd like to see in a board gaming channel that you haven't found yet or just want more of? That's a good question, Tim. I think I might have said a while ago I wish there were more channels that focused on strategies in games, different strategies. But I've seen some channels actually start to do that now. I think there's one called Legendary Tactics. I think that's the name of it. Um, I might be confusing that with a game name, but I think that channel has started to do a lot of strategy discussions about games, and I've enjoyed that. Uh, I don't know off the top of my head, I can't think of anything right now that a board game channel is doing um, that I'm yearning for. There's so many channels that I follow right now that I'm really enjoying, and I would say overall I'm really enjoying the channels that. In fact, Melissa at Tantrum House is listening to this. I'm not sure if Tantrum House does this, probably, but I love that on YouTube now you can add timestamps. You can do that for a long time, but you can label those timestamps and see them in the progress bar. So if you already know how a game plays, you can very easily skip past that and get to a part of the discussion, and the reviewer can label that discussion very precisely. They can say, okay, this is the review, or this is the section about what we liked, or the section that we don't like, or other games that we recommend. I always love seeing like other games we recommend if you like this, or if you like other games, if you like these games, you'll probably like this as well. So I love that. I love that aspect of YouTube now that you can divide up the different topics in the progress bar itself and label them. I'll think on that question then, though, Tim. I'll let you know if I have a better answer. Patrick says, saw your name on the box of City Builder Ancient World as a day one backer. Yeah, I love Inside Up games, and so I don't back everything they do, but I back a lot of what they do, and I definitely got a copy of City Builder. It's on my shelf over here. I haven't played it yet, though. I haven't played it, so I don't have any thoughts to offer on it yet. Gabrielle is excited that Tuscany is finally available. Yeah, we have a bunch of expansions that were out of stock that we had to reprint, and they're back in stock now. Probably just for a limited time, though, based on how they're selling. We've sold a lot of expansions over the last few days. So if you're looking to get Tuscany, Wingspan Oceania, or Wingspan European, those are the ones that seem to be selling quite quickly. Yeah. Calvis says, forgot to share my excitement immediately after announcement by Brian Games, but better late than never. It's endless joy to wait to September when Wingspan will be released in Latvian and Lithuanian and Estonian too. That's awesome to hear. Yeah, I don't think I even knew that because my coworker Alex handles that process now. But that's wonderful to hear that. I think Wingspan now is in over 30 languages, and we're actually coming up on our 1 millionth copy of Wingspan. That copy is in print right now. Um, so yeah, that's incredible. I'm so happy to have been a part of the process of bringing that game to life with designer Elizabeth Hargrave. Yeah, and it's wonderful that it's reached so many people from around the world. Let's see. Tom says, I'm working on the theory that you want your girlfriend to join in the webcast so you can propose to her live on here. I don't know if we're at the proposal point in our relationship yet, Tom, but um, a few weeks ago, I mentioned that Megan offered to appear on the live cast for a few minutes to answer some of your questions. And in that live cast where I mentioned this, people posted questions and I wrote them down. And actually, just yesterday, Megan asked me to email them to her. She's right here in the same house as me, but she wanted them over email. So I emailed them to her. She has those questions. She's going to start thinking about them. And I think she is going to join us not next Wednesday, but the next Wednesday after that. So one of the next two Wednesdays, Megan will join us for part of the live cast to answer those questions. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to how that goes. This definitely is not her format, her thing. And so I appreciate her indulging you and indulging me to join us for just a few minutes to answer those questions. We'll see how it goes. Craig asked, am I coming to Gen Con? No, I'm not coming to Gen Con. I did receive the invitation to Geekway to the West, which is a wonderful St. Louis convention where you just come and play games for a few days. Their convention is normally in May, but they moved it to October 5th, 6th, and 7th this year, which is right in the middle of the week. And I have been debating coming. I was kind of wanting to see what their invitation said about vaccinations and COVID and safety and things like that. And I got the invitation today. So their Geekway tickets will go live this Friday, June 4th at, I believe, 9 a.m. Central Time. And I like what they said about the vaccinations. They're not mandating it. I think it would be hard for a big convention to mandate vaccinations, but they highly recommended that people get it or only attend if they have been vaccinated. And yeah, so that was good to hear. And they had other safety guidelines as well. So I am trusting the vaccine, trusting that my full vaccination will help and that other people will follow those guidelines as well, especially since we have a lot of time between now and October. I'm saying this because I would love to play games with anyone who wants to attend Geekway to the West and can. I know that's tough for people's work schedules to do it in the middle of the week, but one of my favorite things is just going to Geekway and playing games that you love, maybe games that I haven't played, but games that you love with people, with you, people that I normally don't get to play games with. So if St. Louis is within your range of places that you can go and you're vaccinated, you feel safe coming to that environment, I'd highly recommend considering it. And if you can't make it in October, they do have, I think they'll be back to normal next May. They'll have a convention in their normal time slot next May. Yeah. David says David actually just mentioned the Wingspan million copy thing that I mentioned a second ago. He says, are you planning something special for that? And I know this is a huge milestone, but how rare is that in the industry? Is it one published game a year eventually hits that? Every 5 years? I have no sense of real scale here. I don't know either, David. I haven't seen many games talk about how many copies they've sold in that way. I know in the Ticket to Ride box, it even like 5 years ago it said like 3 million copies sold worldwide, which is amazing. I'm sure that number is way higher now. So and I'm sure Pandemic has sold 1 million copies. I don't think as many games that get that high. Um, but I don't know if any. I'd love to pose that question to you all because I'm pretty sure a company would advertise that when it happens. So what games have you heard companies say, "Hey, we've sold 1 million copies of this game"? Um, Let me know any other ones. I know Ticket to Ride. I'm sure about Pandemic. I'm sure Catan has sold 1 million. I'm talking about modern hobby games too. I am guessing Hanabi has. I'm guessing just one. Like some of the Mind probably has. I'm looking over at my collection here to see what may have sold 1 million copies. Uh, Gloomhaven probably has at this point. Yeah, let me know if you've heard any games that have sold 1 million copies. And David, your question: are we doing anything special for it? Um, we might. We might. It's not something I think I'll. Well, what can I say? I'll just say it. My plan is to put something special in the millionth copy box. Uh, I don't want this. The reason I'm hesitating is I don't want this to cause a frenzy. It's not going to be something worth all that much. It might just be a certificate saying, "Hey, this is the millionth copy of Wingspan." Um, so I don't want this to cause a weird buying frenzy or anything like that. It is not worth that. But if you don't have Wingspan or you want to buy Wingspan as a gift uh, later this year, and also actually I don't want to say it because I don't want anyone who wants to buy Wingspan now to hold off on buying it until we do this. It will not be worth anything like that. Um, but yeah, we're going to do something very, very small in that specific copy. So someone who opens it will get a nice little surprise. Maybe it'll make them smile one day, and then they'll move on. Yeah, that's pretty much as far as it'll go, I think. And we'll probably celebrate it. I'll talk about it. I'll be excited about selling the millionth copy. Yeah. Billy Indiana is saying that he's having his first game night June 14th with friends in person, and he's going to plan on teaching Between Two Castles and Mad King Ludwig. Maybe we'll get lucky and receive the expansion by then. I think that's pretty possible. We'll see. We'll see. But if you're teaching it for the first time, you might as well just play with the base game anyway, even though the expansion is very, very easy to incorporate into the base game. Craig says that he might come to Geekway to play games with me. That would be awesome, Craig. I'd love to play games with you and anyone else who wants to attend Geekway to the West in October. Tom says, will each of the new Wingspan expansions add new boards and mechanisms or just new birds? He says, I was pleasantly surprised to see so many more expansions planned for the game. Tom's referring to what I've said publicly a number of times, which is that we plan on having expansions for the remaining 4 continents that we haven't covered: Africa, Asia, Antarctica, and Latin America. He says, one concern I see is if you want to add specific expansions only or go back to the base game or to introduce new players, the time to remove expansions will be extensive. Any thoughts on solving this with the big box that you're working on? Well, Tom, part of the conundrum with the big box that I think we're solving by making it big and modular is that we don't really know exactly what's going to be in the future expansions. I don't even know what's going to be in the next expansion because Elizabeth is still working on it. I don't have any files for it yet. So I don't know. I don't know what's in it. But we do go into every expansion with a couple philosophies. One, it must integrate it must integrate with the core game, and you don't need any other expansions to play it. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say there. That each expansion is independent of the other expansions, but it can also be combined with any of the other expansions. So those are the two pieces of the puzzle that we're always working with. Must work with the core game, obviously, but independent of other expansions. So if someone owns Wingspan, the core game, but they're not interested in the Oceania expansion or the European expansion, they can buy the Antarctica expansion when it comes out, and they can just have that and the core game, and that's fine. But if they also have the European expansion, they can combine those two expansions together. And I think one other thing that you mentioned here is the idea that if you do have all the stuff mixed together or some of the stuff mixed together, that it is not overwhelming for newcomers. I would say Oceania brushed upon that a little bit in that Nectar can be a little too much, I think, for someone who's brand new to Wingspan to really pay attention to. But I think you can still play with Nectar and they can just ignore it if they want. Or you can just you can just remove like the 17 or so cards that have Nectar on them, the bird cards, and let them play without those cards. So in general, though, we want the expansions to be welcoming to anyone who's playing the game, new or experienced gamers, if you've shuffled all the components together. Yeah. Frank, fellow publisher Frank, who's working on the Isle of Cats expansion, he says, from the numbers I've heard, 500,000 is unusual. A million, I think, is very, very rare unless you include more mass market games, like games that cost $20 or less. Wingspan is a $60 game. I think Ticket to Ride is also a $60 game. Catan's up there in like the 50s. So, and Pandemic, I think, is 40 to 50, maybe even more at this point. Carcassonne, Tom. Toth mentioned Carcassonne, definitely. Sean mentioned maybe The Crew. Maybe it seems a little early. Like even Azul. Azul is very popular. I don't think Azul is at a million copies yet, but I could be wrong about that. Garrett says, have I ever watched Game Maker's Toolkit on YouTube? I do. I love the Game Maker's Toolkit channel. Yeah. It's video games focused on recent episode on tutorials. Yeah, I actually just watched that yesterday. Yeah, I love Game Maker's Toolkit. It is a series about tabletop games, but I'm sorry, it's a series about digital games, video games. But I found that a lot of the stuff they talk about applies to tabletop games. And I agree, Garrett. The recent episode on tutorials is really, really interesting. There are definitely things that video games can do that tabletop games can't do, but the opposite is true as well. And I think there's a lot to be learned from video games for us tabletop game designers and publishers, especially in terms of tutorials. Yeah, it's a great video. I'm glad you mentioned it here. Tim says, I'm certainly excited about going to Gen Con for the first time this year. Sounds like I need to consider Geekway to the West as well. Would be nice to play a game with you. Yeah, Tim, I think I think you're in Indiana. Gen Con is closer to you, but Geekway is not that far of a drive. And I think it's my favorite convention. They're very different conventions. Gen Con, I think you go in general, and people might differ on this, but I think in general you go for the vendor hall. You go for all that stuff that's being sold there. There are times and places to play games, but it's very, very event driven. You have to really schedule out every little thing you're going to do. Whereas Geekway, you just show up and play some games. There's very little scheduling that you need to do. You just show up and put a game on the table that you want to play. Check out a game from the Play and Win library. They have a wonderful Play and Win section, and just start to play. Yeah, I love that about Geekway. Yeah, I think for what this is odd. I have no questions right now. I've already talked about the things that I played recently today. That I have a play test today. Doing a lot of proofreading lately, or coordinating the proofreading process. Played some disc golf. Did a video about poker-like games, and had a nice chat with Chris at Meeple Overboard. Those are really all the topics that I had to talk about today. Let's see. Frank is designing a 1 million sold box at the minute, so they've either just reached it or they're about to. Okay, that's awesome for Azul. He says, you've got things like Exploding Kittens. Yeah, I'm sure Exploding Kittens has Cards Against Humanity, but they're a different type of game. That's true. And I'm guessing, yeah, both of them have probably reached and far surpassed 1 million copies at this point. That's exciting about Azul. Kevin says, what goes into choosing the age range of a game? Do you need to get it approved? That's the odd thing. There's really no official approval process for age ranges. You just kind of put on the box what you think is right. And there are two approaches, I would say. One is to go with the accurate approach and put the age that you actually think people can play the game. What is age appropriate for someone to learn and play the game? There's also kind of the safe approach of just putting 14 plus on the box, which moves it outside of the category of a toy for some regions that care about things that are classified as a toy or not as a toy. And it can mean that you don't have to put certain other icons on the box if you're putting that age range on the box. I also think in India, I think that's really, really important in India, apparently. We are starting to get into the market in India and that 14 plus age range. uh, results in a lot less paperwork, I think, for Indian publishers over there. Yeah, or publishers in India. Let's see here. I'm looking at even looking at my email now to see if I have any random topics I can cover over here. I have an email about. Uh, oh no, this doesn't apply. Well, actually, I'll talk about it out loud, and then I can answer it in person. So, someone named Jeff says, "I'm in the midst of strategizing our reward tiers and stretch goals, and I found your video very helpful. My question is, how do you feel about reward tiers that engage backers in some aspect of the design, like design a custom track, a bike, etc.? I'm calling these contributor levels, but ensure what monetary value. I think somewhere in the epic level, but uh, I'm an unknown in the marketplace, so just not sure." Yeah, that's interesting. So I guess this is a two-part question almost. One is, should you have reward levels where um, where where backers can actually help design a gameplay element of the game? That's one level. I lean against that, and I kind of also lean against custom reward levels at this point. I've had, I'd say, good experiences financially with custom rewards, but not like a custom art in viticulture. You can see like the mamas and papas in viticulture. That's art that people paid for, and so it means that I basically lose control of the diversity of those people that are on the art, which is really important to me to have a wide diversity of ages and ethnicities and genders and things like that. Um, so that's one part of it. I would say like the level that I'm comfortable with is naming rights, doing something naming related that the creator still has some control over. So you can't just name it something really zany like the I don't know, something that does not fit thematically at all. I think that's fine to do. As for it, like regardless of that, say Jeff decides it's best for him to have a reward level that lets someone design a gameplay element of the game. How much should they pay for that? And that's really tough to tell. It's I don't know. I mean, if you're an unknown creator, it's really not worth all that much. If you are a really famous creator, a big company that's made some very popular games, say Isaac Gloomhaven, say he put a reward level where you could work with him to design a level of Gloomhaven. That's a big deal. I mean, that's something that I think a lot of people will pay money for and want credit for and all that. Uh, but at the same time, like designers get paid for their work. So designers don't pay to do work; they get paid to do their work. So that's the flip side of it. It's a little weird. I don't know how I'm going to answer this question. It's an interesting question, but I do not know how I'm going to answer it. Good question, Jeff. If you happen to be watching this, and I'll answer on my blog later. Tim says, "Are you back in the prequel to In the Hall of the Mountain King?" I am not currently. I'm curious about it because I love In the Hall of the Mountain King, but I love the polyomino aspect of it, and I love the kind of the pyramid building, engine building aspect of it, of building your troll smoot, I think they call it in the game. And I don't think either of those elements are in the prequel. And so knowing that I love those mechanisms, I would love to see another game with those mechanisms, but it's not the well. I love like dwarves and trolls and things like that, but that isn't the reason that I play in the Hall of the Mountain King. I play it for those mechanisms in particular. So there's currently I'm not backing it. Is my short answer. Billy says, "Are there any Kickstarters or GameFound projects that you're following or excited about right now?" Let's see what I am backing right now. Thank you for the question. Let's see what I'm following. I am following. Oh, I just backed the Secret Cabal Gaming Podcast, just as a fan of the show. I'm backing the Isle of Cats. Don't forget the kittens. I'm backing the Tussie Mussy expansion. And I think those are the only live projects that I'm backing right now. Let's see what I'm following that's still live. So this is what I'm undecided about. I am following The Witcher just pretty much out of curiosity. I don't think that's a style of game I'm looking for. Although I really appreciate this. This was a nice surprise. I'm also following Keystone. It was a nice surprise to see on The Witcher that they offered a really reasonable reward level. It's still, I mean, it's $86 USD, which is still a lot, but that's their standard pledge level. I'm used to seeing these big miniatures games cost like at least 100, usually like 125 or more. And their deluxe version does cost that much, but I appreciate that they made a more affordable version for people who just want to play the standard version of the game and don't need all the bells and whistles. I've seen fewer and fewer projects do that, and I mean, they have way more backers for the deluxe version. It may not even be end up worth the effort to make the standard version, but it sounds like they are going for a retail presence in the long run, and so it's good that they have that. So I don't know, that was exciting for me to see on their project, and I might consider that lower level. I'm not going to pay $150 for it, despite how beautiful those miniatures are. But yeah, I might consider the lower level. I think the thing throwing me off a little bit is the sheer number of decks of cards. That's always kind of a small red flag for me as a player. Nothing against the game design, but just it means that there's a lot of different stuff to set up and shuffle and get ready. But I could be totally wrong about that. I'm curious what people think. Is anyone here backing The Witcher, and what got you to back it other than the theme? Is there something really exciting about the mechanisms that drew you into it? Alex is here. Okay, Alex from Board Game Co. I think he's actually played The Witcher, so he might be able to answer that. And he says, I recommend Mosaic if you like that kind of game. It's so good. Let me look up Mosaic on here. Mosaic. And Alex, I need to watch your review on Mosaic if you were recommending it. Mosaic. Oh, Story of Civilization. Oh, yeah, I have talked about this, Alex. Obviously, I'm a little biased here because I designed the Civilization game that I've been wanting to play, and that game is Tapestry. So if people are looking for a Civilization game even after playing Tapestry, go for it. I love to hear that. But that's been, I think, the reason that's been holding me back for Mosaic, that I already have the Civ game that I've been looking for. I just happened to design it. Brian says, any thoughts on publishing different form factors from Stonemaier, like small box or cards only games? Any thoughts? I'm guessing, Brian, if you're to clarify, but I'm guessing you're asking, like, will Stonemaier Games publish games that are outside of the typical games that we make? And I'd say it's pretty unlikely. Like, we've kind of found our niche, our niche for games that we make. They're usually medium weight Euro games, fairly easy to teach and learn. But there is even a range among them. Like Rolling Realms will be on the much lighter end of the scale. Between Two Cities is on the much lighter end of the scale, and they scale up to games like Tapestry Inside that last a couple hours. But I always like to have a component hook. I need a component hook for a game that I'm going to publish. And so if it's just a cards only game, maybe the component hook is the art. But I'm going to need some other fun, fancy components, some sort of table presence, and there's something that's fun to pick up and play with for us to publish it. Carlos, I think, is responding to the question earlier about what do I want to see from YouTube creators. And Carlos says, I definitely think we need more content related to strategies for board games. That's what I mentioned earlier, too. Not sure if you feel that as a publisher you need to help with that. Sometimes when I'm playing Tapestry, I feel that a certain civilization is designed to be played a certain way that I'm missing, and maybe a little strategy tip will help me. I agree. I mean, I think Legendary Tactics is doing a good job at that, and maybe they'll cover all the civs someday. Feel free to let them know. Go check out the Legendary Tactics YouTube channel. Let them know that that's content you want, because I think they're excited to make content that people want to watch. Detty says, I recently finished the first Red Rising trilogy. I'm on the third Mistborn book. Are there any other series you can recommend? Those two I love. I mean, I love Red Rising. I love the first trilogy for Mistborn, and the second one too, but I love the first one the most. I mean, anything for Brandon Sanderson. He writes amazing series. If you look on my blog, if you go to jamiestegmeyer.com, you can see a lot of the books that I love. The Jade series is one I've really been enjoying. Jade War, Jade City, I think is the first one. And the final book will come out later this year. I've enjoyed The Expanse. I think the final book of The Expanse comes out later this year. Any other trilogies? Oh, the Grishaverse series, which is now getting a lot of visibility due to the Shadow and Bone Netflix show. That is an awesome universe. Leah Bartugo is an amazing writer. I really, really love that entire series of books. Yeah. Artist Ian O'Toole is joining us today, and lots of great content creators. Ian O'Toole, the artist, Alex from Board Game Co., the YouTube channel. Carlos says, you have said that you won't publish dueling versions of your games, but are you open if someone reaches you with an idea and another company publishes it, like what you did with Leaders of Euphoria? Maybe. I would say the one exception that I might start to consider is if the components of the dueling game can fit into the core game itself. So I'm going to throw out an example here. Not saying that I'm looking for this. This isn't something we would do because we're done making stuff for Scythe. But in the times when we weren't done making stuff for Scythe, if someone had come to me and said, Jamie, here's a standalone game for 1 to 2 players. It's a scythe game for 1 to 2 players, but you could use these components or most of these components in the core game for scythe. That's something I would be interested in. That's something I hadn't thought of for a long time, but that is something that I think I would be interested in. Yeah. Carl's also excited about the Isle of Cats expansions. Paul says he's teaching viticulture tomorrow to a group of friends who don't normally play board games. They normally play skirmish war games. Do you have any suggestions? Let's see. I don't know if viticulture will be the game for them, but I hope that goes over well. Viticulture is a far cry from skirmish war games. Um, Scythe might be a little bit more up their alley, even though Scythe isn't really all about combat. Kemet is a fantastic game that I think blends Euro mechanisms and combat mechanisms. So that might be one to try. Uh, yeah, I'm curious to see how viticulture goes over with them, Paul, and thank you for teaching it to them. If you, I do have I should have a YouTube video about how to teach viticulture. Search YouTube for that. It should be up there. That would have some recommendations for like teaching tips. Yeah. Alex says that his review of Mosaic is likely going up on Saturday, and that's fair on Tapestry. He says they feel very different, but they do fit that slot. That's awesome. Well, Alex, either way, I'm curious to hear your opinions on any game. I think you do a wonderful job on your channel, so I'm looking forward to hearing your opinions on Mosaic on Saturday. Patrick says the newest update on Kickstarter is that it is a Kickstarter only run, not retail. Interesting. We backed because we like the video game, and I think it would be better than some of the other video turned board games. Plus, they say it plays 2 players really well. I did watch a little bit of the before you play video from Monique and Naveen, and they played it 2 player and seemed to really enjoy it. So that's good to know. I'm looking for like a standout mechanism of it though to really jump out at me. Tom says, what are your thoughts on game developers publishing games with expansions included on a first printing? To me, that isn't really an expansion then. It's more of a module. So if the publisher is calling it like an expansion in the box, I mean, the expansion is something outside of the box, in my opinion. But if they want to throw a game out where they have the core game and they say, okay, once you've played this core game a few times, here's a module that you can add, or here's a few different modules that you can mix or match. I think that's fun. I think that's fun to see in games. I'm trying to think if I've seen that in a recent game. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure it's been in games. I guess you could say that Stonemaier Games does that with solo modes in a way. Most of our core games include solo modes that you only use for solo play. It's slightly different though. Tim has some nice things to say about Catastrophe, a game of 9 lives. He thinks it would be neat to see Walter and Biddy along Lil Bub. What's the standout mechanism in that game? Also, he mentions Castlescape. I heard Josh from the designer of Castlescape talk on the Board Game Design Lab podcast the other day. That was a really interesting discussion to listen about his thoughts on deck building games that also incorporate something else into the game. In this case, a board where you're building castles. Alex says, regarding The Witcher, he says, it's expensive. Make sure you want it. But it provides the most accessibly and rewarding adventure game I've played yet. It's not doing anything amazingly new, but what it does well, and it feels like a Witcher game. That's interesting to me. Yeah, I always am in the mood for a rewarding adventure game. I love the word rewarding there because I really do like games that have a strong sense of progress, where you're being rewarded with more and more stuff. I even have a top 10 video about my top 10 favorite rewarding games. It's one of my favorite. It's not really a mechanism, but just a genre of games that just make you feel good about everything you're doing. So that has me a little bit more intrigued if it's in that style of game. That makes me curious about it. Alan says we're back in The Witcher. I've been watching Alex's coverage on it, and it seems like they are making it deeper and more varied. I agree the price point is very good, but the expansion for female characters is expensive. Wesley says, any thoughts on best approaching the last 30 minutes of a Kickstarter campaign I'm running? I'm wrapping up the market in just a bit today, the campaign for The Market. Or do you think that at this point, all that is done is done? In the last 30 minutes, yeah, I mean, I would just say be active on the comments. I don't know if the comments are going off the charts right now or if it's really slow, but either way, you can chime into the comments and just kind of thank people. You can thank people by name if you want. Just show people that you are very active in the comments on your own project right now, so that they feel welcome to chime in if they want to chime in. I hope the last 30 minutes goes well for you. Matt says, have I read The Gentleman Bastards? I read the first, I think, 100 pages of it, and I just couldn't get into it. I think For some reason, it's just the writing style of Leigh Bardugo. She has a very similar kind of style of rowdy cast of characters going on heists and missions and things like that in her books in her Grishaverse series that drew me in more than the Gentleman Bastards. I don't mean to knock on the Gentleman Bastards. This is purely personal preference between those two book series. But yeah, I tried it and I just couldn't get into it. Alex says he's been enjoying the Shadow and Bone series, which I would recommend, especially if any of you are looking for a new series. I thought they did a great job, great production on the Netflix series Shadow and Bone. And if you watch it and enjoy it, I highly recommend the books. The books are fantastic. Billy says, have I been playing much on Board Game Arena lately? If so, what's your favorite game on Board Game Arena or the best game you've played there recently? I actually do have a video about this, but it's maybe a little outdated at this point. I did a video around this time last year, my favorite games on Board Game Arena and the implementations there. Lately, I've been playing a lot of Tiny Islands there, Lost Ruins of Arnak, and tonight actually is my game night on there, so I'll be playing something. I'm kind of in the mood for Splendor, and I'd like to try Tranquility and Lucky Numbers. So I'm kind of in the mood for lighter games, I think, tonight that I want to try on Board Game Arena. What about you? And what about anyone else? This question for anyone too. I love that question. Like, what is your favorite game to play on Board Game Arena right now? Alex clarifies something about what Patrick said about the Witcher campaign. He says it's not Kickstarter only. The wording is confusing. They're saying that at the moment it's not yet being sold outside of Kickstarter. Okay, but it will someday, or maybe they're hoping it will someday. We'll see if they actually do it. David says, always happy to see your live streams. Hope you're having a great blast of a day. Thank you, David. I appreciate that. I hope the same for you. George says, how is Rolling Realms coming? So yeah, the printed version of Rolling Realms. It's coming along well. There is one component in it that got tied up due to the Chinese New Year that has impacted the whole schedule by quite a bit. But I'm kind of taking the approach of not rushing things this year. I want to, not that we haven't done this in the past, but I understand that things are slower this year in terms of production and freight shipping, and if something takes longer than normal, we'll just, like, that's the kind of the perk that we have about the Stonemaier way of publishing things. If something takes longer than normal to get out there, it doesn't really impact you because you're not waiting on it. You haven't spent any money on it yet. You're waiting for us to announce it and accept pre-orders, and then we start shipping it to you a week or so later. So I'm just trying to be more patient this year. I'm not a patient person, but I'm trying that out with Rolling Realms and our other products that are coming out this year, like the Tapestry expansion. My friend Chance is dropping in to say hi. Hey, Chance. Hopefully I'll see you at one of these game nights soon, because we have been getting together with people. Everyone's fully vaccinated. It's really nice to see people again. So I hope you're able to join at some point in the future. Alan says he likes the exploration of the cards in The Witcher, similar to how it works with Scythe. That's a sell for me. Obviously, I'm a fan of the encounter system in Scythe. It goes back to what Alex said about it being kind of rewarding. You never have a bad encounter in Scythe. It's always something good. So maybe they did something similar in The Witcher. Detti mentioned a great example here. Taverns of Tiffenthal has modules that you can add in out of the box. So they're modules, not expansions. They're just little modules in the box that you can add in when you're ready. Carol's dropping in late as usual. Hey, Carol, good to have you here. Gerald says, you don't like automas in two-player games. I don't necessarily say that. I just want to say that when I design multiplayer modes around not needing a bot of any sort. So that's my general design philosophy. He says, how do you feel about the Dungeon Pets two-player mode? I haven't played that. He says it has about 3 meeples that move to the next location each round. They just block spaces. I don't know. But what I should say is that I love Dune Imperium, but I haven't played it at 2 players, and yet I've heard the 2-player mode is really easy to do. I think you just flip a card and you put like a meeple on that location. That is probably like the most involved level of a bot that I would want to do, and I need to try that to see how I like it. I kind of prefer the bot that we tried in Pendulum, which is at the beginning of the game, you put some extra meeples on the board when you're playing with only 2 players, and that's it. You set them there, you forget about it, and that having those meeples there impacts your strategy for the entire game, because you can know, okay, this space is going to be a little harder to get to. I can still get to it with my Grande worker, but it's a little harder to get to, and trying to plan around that and think about that. I kind of like that method. I don't think that would work with some other worker placement games where the spot is truly blocked, like in Dune Imperium, though. So I'm curious to try that in a 2-player game at some point. Greg says that he's been loving Chakra and Abyss on Board Game Arena. I haven't tried Chakra, but I do love Abyss on Board Game Arena. Wesley says he loves Splendor, just in general. Matt says, why Board Game Arena over TTS, Tabletop Simulator, or Tabletopia? For me, it's just the interface is so much easier to use when I just want to play a game. I don't want to think about all the mouse controls and how to flip the card and put the card on the bottom of the deck, or how to roll the dice. I don't want to think about that stuff when I play a game, like when I play a game in real life. And I love Tabletop Simulator and Tabletopia. I love the experience they provide. I love how they're great for playtesting. But when I just want to play a game, I just want to do it either in person if I can, or on Board Game Arena where the game knows how it operates, or a full AI digital version of the game like we have for many of our games now. Carol's enjoying Lost Ruins of Arnak, Beyond the Sun, and Seasons. Yeah, Seasons is a game that I really enjoy in Board Game Arena, but not as much on the tabletop, despite the beautiful components. She says, I just learned Draftosaurus. I love Draftosaurus, and Nidavellir. I don't know if I correctly pronounced that, but I have played that on Board Game Arena as well. It's a good implementation. Tim says the mechanisms for Catastrophe, a game of 9 lives, are card drafting, dice rolling, hand management, player interaction, and Take That. I know you don't usually like Take That, though this seems to be a humorous, lighthearted game for 2 to 6 players. I do like that player range. Josh says, Josh is actually here from Castlescape. He says, thanks for the shout out about the Board Game Design Lab podcast. I've been a longtime reader of your blog and always appreciate your insight. Oh, thanks, Josh. I appreciate that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the hook of Castlescape, building a castle using the wall minis in the general game board. Yes, when I heard you talk about that on the Board Game Design Lab podcast, I was like, that is so cool. That normally forgive me if I say this incorrectly, but you said normally in some deck building games there are kind of dead cards. They're cards that have maybe victory points on them, but they don't do a lot when they're in your hand. And for you in Castlescape, you use those cards to build walls. So you actually get to feel like you're making something whenever you draw or play one of those dead cards. I don't know if I'm saying that entirely correctly, but that's my recollection of it. And I love that concept that the cards doesn't really feel dead because you're actually doing something with it. That's really, really cool. Chad says, we recently played a classic team card game called Hand and Foot. During this game and our previous play, my mind immediately went to ways to improve the length of the game and the clunky nature of scoring each round. Have you done this much with classic card games? I haven't now. I spend so much brain power trying to design my own games, my own expansions, that I don't spend that brain power redesigning games from other designers and other publishers. I do think about them analytically, and I try to learn from them, but I haven't ever tried to I probably have at some point, but I can't think of any examples. On an ongoing basis, I'm not actively trying to redesign someone else's game. I have heard some designers do that from time to time. I don't know. I don't do that. Alex says that's an excellent point. Those encounter cards in The Witcher are similar to those in Scythe. He didn't think of that. It's a fun system, and they are generally good, but also situationally good. And when they are bad, it counters by giving you a quest with a good reward. Unlike Scythe, though, you don't see the results before you choose. That's a pretty key difference there, but I like what you described there. And I like that what you say, when they are bad in The Witcher, when the encounters are bad, it counters that or counteracts that by giving you a quest with a good reward. That's interesting. I love quests with good rewards. Yeah. All right, you guys are making me more and more curious about The Witcher. I might have to check this out. Sean says, how do I feel about connecting with Dune Imperium with not reading or remembering the books? Well, Dune Imperium actually got me to read the first book. So I had never read Dune until I played the game, and I was like, I want to know more about this world. I want to know what these things are, these factions, these people. And so I read the book after that. If you haven't read the books in a while, and I guess based on that, if you haven't read the books in a while, or you haven't read them at all, I think you can still really enjoy the game. Although there are plenty of people who don't enjoy Dune Imperium. I just really love it. It's my style of game. I really, really enjoy it. Chance says, Dune Imperium is actually really nice. I immediately rolled my eyes when reading the rules, but it was very easy to keep track of. Yeah, it was. That's the interesting thing about the game. It's full of interesting choices, but it does not take that much brain power to actually play it. There's not a lot of little things to remember throughout the game. Tim says Tuscany had modules. You're totally right. Yeah, Tuscany was an expansion, or is an expansion in itself, and Tuscany within the expansion has separate modules, but not within the core game box itself. Yeah. Tina says, talking about Board Game Arena, is online gaming a necessity because of COVID, or do I see myself actually continuing with it going forward? Do I think people will turn to it more in the future? I'm curious what happens after COVID with Board Game Arena. I think enough people have learned about how great it is that they will continue to use it. I will continue to use it, I think, because I've actually used my my what used to be an in-person game night, and will return to be in-person game night. Um, I've been using the virtual game nights on Board Game Arena, and one of the nice things about it is that I get to play games with friends around the country and the world instead of just people in St. Louis. I've really, really enjoyed that. So for that reason, I think I will continue to use it to play games I love with people around the country, and yeah, I'll definitely continue to do that. And I think it also is a handy place to learn games without first buying them. So if I'm on the fence about buying a game, or if I just want to talk about a game on my YouTube channel, I can play it on Board Game Arena if it's on there, and then be able to talk about it. Yeah, so I think it will still be at least relevant for me. I'm curious how other people will adjust to that as well once people are able to play with people friends again in the future. Tim says, I just noticed that Jackie Davis is one of the artists for the cat game. That's awesome. I do love Jackie's art. Billy says his Yedo Deluxe Kickstarter is supposed to arrive today. I seem to remember that you like that game. What is your favorite mechanism in Yedo that I can look forward to? There's a lot of stuff I love in Yedo, but my favorite thing is the mission system. This actually goes back to what Alex said a little bit about The Witcher. I love the mission system in Yedo, where you have this pretty complicated mission, and there are different levels of difficulty. You can choose if I want to go after a really hard mission, a really easy mission. And you can choose with any mission to go after like the basic stuff, and usually it requires you to have a worker in a certain space. So I really like the thematic touch that, like, if the mission says that you need to go to the docks and I don't know, open up a crate, then you need to put a worker on like the docks area of the board to do that mission. But also every mission has a bonus. If you go over the top and do some extra stuff, then you get an extra benefit as well. Yeah, just I love how gratifying the mission system is in Yedo. So I hope you enjoy it in the deluxe version. I still have my original version on the shelf, and I love that version. Tony says, I seem to encounter more and more games that state that they take a specific time to play, like 45 to 60 minutes, and end up discovering that the game takes much longer than that. How important do you feel an honest estimated playtime is, and what kinds of things do you do to calculate that as a publisher? The thing that I do as a publisher is I use our playtest times. So we have a lot of data about how long the game took to playtest, and I include setup and cleanup in that time. I know it can still vary from person to person and group to group, depending on analysis, paralysis, things like that. But we playtest with a lot of different people, so we have a lot of those people in our playtest group. I think it's generally pretty important to include an accurate time there, because otherwise it's essentially you're misleading people. You're falsely advertising. I don't think it's always intentional. I think sometimes it can be hopeful. A publisher can say, okay, I hope someone can play this in 45 minutes, but in reality, it takes 75 minutes. I think there might be a little bit of that going on, and I have a little bit of that too. I think with our games that I hope Viticulture can be played in 45 minutes when you're just playing with two players, but it can also take a lot longer than that. So that's why we have the range of time on there on the box. Alex says, oh darn, I have Yedo unplayed. Might be time to prioritize playing it. Yeah, I do really enjoy Yedo. I hope you get the chance to play it, Alex. It is a really, really cool game. And one little tip for those of you who are getting Yedo or thinking about playing Yedo, there are a set of cards in the game that are pretty mean. They're kind of mean. I think they're like the samurai event cards. And the game even says you can remove those cards. You don't have to play with these cards. And I would recommend doing that. Unless you really enjoy kind of some mean events in the games that come up, things that you can do that are mean to other players. I think there's certainly a place for that, but I have almost permanently removed those cards from my game because I didn't enjoy them. So hopefully the deluxe version still offers that modular option within the game. Talking about modules in games today, that's the theme of the day. Jen Wei actually mentioned something here that I totally should have mentioned, which is that, thank you, Jen Wei, for mentioning this, that Monster Couch informed me yesterday that the iOS version of Wingspan Digital, will soon be available. So they're accepting pre-orders now, and it will come out, I think, in 6 or 7 weeks, in mid-July, basically. So there's a big post about this on the Wingspan Facebook page, the nice little teaser trailer that Monster Couch puts together. So finally, Wingspan is coming to iOS. Android, I think, will follow. They're working on that, but iOS is what they're focusing on right now. And they're also working on getting the expansions into Steam and Switch and eventually iOS. I think they have another announcement on Friday. So I will post in the Wingspan Facebook group when they say I can post about that. Tim says Miyabi is a fun polyomino game from Michael Kiesling dealing with a Japanese garden. It advertises 5 expansions in the box, though they were probably more like modules, as you said. Yeah, I just like the terminology of modules better there, because expansion, again, is something that's outside of the box, in my opinion. George says, any news from Board Game Arena for Tapestry? Yes, I actually did talk to them about this last week, and they are going to make an adjustment to help it get to Board Game Arena a little bit faster than is the current progress for the game. I don't want to go into too many details. I don't want to throw them under the bus. But I think there was something that they didn't know, and now they know it, and I think they're going to move forward with it pretty quickly into alpha phase. Yeah. Tom says, when does the pre-order for Secrets and Soirees end? I think it'll be ongoing. We didn't sell out of it, so we still have copies of Secrets and Soirees. So, and we didn't have a special pre-order price because it's just a $20 expansion. So, I think it's going to continue on as long as we have copies of it. Yeah. All right, I think we're right at 11 o'clock here. Thank you so much for joining us. Just anyone who joined in the chat today, this meant a lot to me that you join in and share your morning with me. And I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you next week. And yeah, I'm going to go check out The Witcher right now, learn more about that. Take care. Bye.